of this particular first stage booster supporting this mission. Together, Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy have completed more than 450 launches and over 380 reflights.
It's hard to keep track of the scorecard. And today, this booster will be attempting to land on our drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas. And this would be the 100th booster landing on that particular drone ship alone.
That's pretty incredible. And rapid reusability dramatically reduces launch costs, which helps increase launch frequency and enables a wide array of new government, commercial, and scientific opportunities in space like this one.
Now, lowering the cost of access to space is helping take humanity's next steps into the solar system, whether it's in LEO, GEO, interplanetary, or even deep space. Now, when the costs are lower, government and commercial customers can launch more missions, which helps accelerate development. This also helps commercial satellite and private research customers afford to launch more projects to space, and that helps stimulate innovation here on Earth.
Absolutely. And missions like SpaceX's Transporter and Bandwagon rideshare programs help make access to space even more affordable by sharing the cost of a launch across many customers.
All of this is to say reusability is that key innovation that's making space more accessible for the industry as a whole. We just heard Stage 2 LOX load is beginning. We're right on time. But let's talk more about technology and innovation, and we'll head back to Tahira and Josh at Kennedy Space Center.
Thanks, John. Many of the technology demonstrations on board Athena, like Prime 1 and the Grace Hopper that we heard about earlier, were driven by NASA's Space Technology Mission Directorate. Now, some are NASA-supported experiments that are developed by private companies. We also call these tipping point awards. These tipping point investments are valuable, stimulating the lunar economy as activity increases on and around the moon. Now, to talk about these programs, these payloads and awards, we're joined now by Mark Thornblom, Deputy Program Manager for Technical Integration of NASA's Game-Changing Development Program. Mark, welcome. We're so glad to have you joining us.
It's great to be here. It's an exciting night.
Can you first explain, what is tipping point and what does it mean to NASA and our partners?
Sure. So a tipping point project is a true collaboration and partnership between NASA and an industry partner. We are seeking commercially led new space technologies that show a promise for the benefit of commercial missions and for NASA. And so essentially what happens is that both NASA and the commercial partner have identified a new technology that is ready to be matured and be tested and then infused in the commercial market. So both NASA and the commercial partner, they both put in money, they put in resources, expertise, test facilities if needed, they put their plan together, they mature the technology, they test it, and so in this case, send it to the moon, prove out that technology, and then be ready to infuse it into the commercial market for a future mission that both the commercial world benefits from and NASA benefits from.
And so there are two tipping points on this lander, right? And so we heard about one a little bit earlier, the Grace Hopper. Can you expand on how this might revolutionize, space exploration?
Yeah, so the word revolutionize is really perfect for this type of mission. In the past, almost exclusively planetary exploration has been done with wheeled rovers. And that's been great. They're incredibly reliable. They do their missions well, and we've benefited greatly from them. But we've got to the point now in the science investigations, particularly on the moon, where we need to get into those more hard-to-reach places. In this case, we want to get to the bottom of a crater. We want to get into those permanently shadowed regions where we believe that resources, water, and other volatiles are there that we can go and eventually extract and use. And so a wheeled rover would be impractical to think that you could get down those steep slopes, over those cliff edges, down into those extreme temperatures, and then back up, right? So the fact that you have a hopper that can come up, over, set down nicely, do the science it needs to do, and then safely get out of there really changes the game on where we can go and do science on planetary bodies. And it's not just applicable to the moon, it has reaches out towards Mars and beyond.
All right, Mark, I'll throw you a curveball.
Sure.
Can you tell us more about another one of these tipping point initiatives with Nokia that hopes to deploy the first cellular wireless network on the moon?
This is the one that seems to just light people up when you talk about it. It's so familiar. Nokia has done such a fantastic job of taking their terrestrial telecom 4G networks that connect billions of people and devices every single day. And they're packaging it for space, and they're going to use it on future Artemis missions and future human sustained presence on the moon and Mars and beyond. And so to get a 4G network and to get that high-speed data, voice and datacom, and have your kind of local intranet connecting all your devices up there really is an important part of meeting communication requirements for a human mission. So this demonstration is going to teach them a lot about what they need to do to collect that data. The environment is obviously very different. You're in a vacuum environment, the temperatures are different, the regolith's going to play. So the way the network responds will be a little bit different on the moon than here. So they need to collect that data so that they can go back and optimize their systems and be ready to deploy on a human mission.
Yeah, I think revolutionize was the right word for these two payloads. This
Absolutely.
is incredible.
Awesome, Mark.
Josh, so how is this integrated onto the Athena spacecraft then?
Well, Nokia's network in a box is mounted high up on one of Athena's closeout panels, and she has 2 antennas on top of Athena, and it connects both of those lunar mobility vehicles that we're talking about exploring the moon's surface.
All right, well, thanks, Josh, and thank you so much, Mark.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Now, when things get busier on and around the moon and Mars, astronauts and robots are going to need a way to stay in touch with each other. Here's a deeper look at how the Nokia tipping point will provide a communications network to help prepare us for that future.
On Earth, a cellular network has many components: base stations, radio units, and a core network that manages the connection between users and the network. Nokia's technology miniaturizes and integrates all of these components into a single network in a box.
This is Nokia Bell Labs Network in a Box that you can hold in your hands. It contains every single component that make up a 4G LTE network. Scaled down to this size, weight, and power, we could install it onto the Intuitive Machines Nova Sea lander along with specially designed antennas. Every gram that we send to the moon matters. While compact, the system also has many redundancies and fail-safes, allowing it to recover and heal itself. We also overhaul the system software to minimize the impact of ionizing radiation that would normally cause sensitive electronics to malfunction.
The network links directly to devices in both the Lunar Outpost Map Rover and Intuitive Machines Micro Nova Hopper. For the mission to succeed, this network must be fully autonomous. It must deploy and configure itself once on the lunar surface. As the lunar rover goes about conducting experiments, and the hopper goes deep within a crater, the network must also constantly make adjustments to ensure it maintains connectivity.
This is an uncrewed mission. There will be no human technician to tweak or repair the network if something goes wrong. Achieving that level of autonomy was a monumental task to undertake. Working with NASA's Space Technology Mission Directorate, Nokia plans to test the first cellular network on the moon. Success will have implications far beyond this important mission.
While Nokia's lunar network technology will be the first deployed on IM-2 mission, it's also being adapted for Artemis 3.
That's right. Now, these high-speed capabilities will be incorporated into the Axiom Space's AXEMU spacesuits, enabling connectivity on the lunar surface. You can think of this as our explorer's own cell phone network, but on the moon. Together, efforts like CLIPS and tipping points are helping advance humanity's reach into our solar system and shape our country's approach to exploration through commercial partnerships.
Tonight, Intuitive Machines' lunar lander is taking NASA's science and technology demonstrations to the moon under the Commercial Payload Services Initiative, or CLIPS as we like to call it in the business, right?
Exactly, Josh. And under CLIPS, NASA asked commercial companies like Intuitive Machines to provide lunar delivery services that advance capabilities for science, exploration, and the commercial development of the moon.
Tahira, it's through CLIPS. NASA selected Intuitive Machines to deliver its Prime 1 drill suite and laser retroreflector array to the moon. However, Intuitive Machines added commercial payloads like the Diamond Yaoki rover, Puli Space Water Snooper, and others to make commercial lunar ambitions a reality. And it's by collaborating with NASA and leveraging CLIPS as a springboard, we've developed services for delivery, data transmission, and infrastructure that commercially develop the moon. Not just for us or NASA, but for all.
Absolutely, and it is an exciting time, Josh. So tonight is also the third CLIPS delivery that is launched on a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. Let's send it back to John and Yome at SpaceX in Hawthorne, California, as they walk us through the final moments of the countdown. We will see you after launch.
Now, as we mentioned at the top of the program, Falcon 9 is enabling these launches of the moon, including the Hakuto R mission, IM-1 a year ago, Blue Ghost, and Resilience, and of course tonight's IM-2 mission. Now, beyond the primary payloads, ride shares like the 3 additional payloads you can see, well, you can't see here, it's below the lander, but those ride shares will be helping to build the lunar economy. All these missions are something that Yome is going to talk about.
Engines are going in flight.
Thanks, John. Yeah, all of these missions are developing our future in space and helping to support sustained human and robotic activity, including scientific research, resource extraction, and infrastructure development. Now, you should be able to see here some of today's rideshare payloads on the stack there, just below the Athena lander.
Now, NASA's Lunar Trailblazer is also hitching a ride today, and we'll learn more about that later in the webcast, as well as Astroforge. They're an asteroid mining company flying its Odin spacecraft, which is headed towards the near-Earth asteroid 2022 OB5. Gotta love some of those asteroid names. And finally, Epic Aerospace's Chimera Orbital Transfer Vehicle, which is what is known as a space tug, a vehicle that works in space to help payloads move to their desired altitudes. And we'll learn more about these in just a bit.
Yeah, these systems are paving the way for our sustained presence both in space and on the moon as we deliver landers, crew, satellites, and rovers in the next few years, building up the moon's equivalent of low Earth orbit, which is known as lower lunar orbit, which will act as the staging point for future missions, supporting lunar communications and providing platforms for science and research.
And in the near future, reusability will extend all the way to the moon, with reusable landers flying their first missions. Frequent, low-cost launches from the moon will eventually allow for lunar exports, like metals and helium-3, which can help support future deep space mission to Mars and beyond. We're coming up at T-minus 5 minutes. Let's turn our attention to Falcon 9, the spacecraft. The good news is all systems are currently a go for on-time
Tanks
liftoff.
pressing for starboard retract.
We just heard the call out. The tanks are pressurizing. We're stiffening the Falcon 9 up in preparation for strongback retract. The strongback is the structure you see on your screen right behind the Falcon 9. You're looking right now at the payload fairing, inside of which Athena, the lunar lander, and the 3 ride shares are located. We also have had the transition to internal power for the spacecraft. That happened several minutes ago. Also, we heard some of the call-outs.
Strongback retract is running.
There's strongback retract begin to run. We have finished loading fuel on the first stage. We are loading liquid oxygen on the second stage, so we are on time, not working significant issues. What we're waiting to see right now is the 2 clamp arms from the strongback begin to open up. I think we can just start to see it now. It takes about 16 seconds to retract. Following that, we will then begin to recline the strongback away from the Falcon 9.
Yep, and you can see those clamp arms are opening as we speak. The vehicle is nearly fully loaded with propellants and will complete at the T-minus 2 minute mark. The range is also green and ready to support today's launch. And if for any reason we do not launch today, we do have a backup opportunity tomorrow at 7:11 p.m. Eastern Time.
At this point in the countdown, Both the first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Falcon 9 uses two propellants. One's a refined form of kerosene called RP1, or Rocket Propellant 1, and we also use LOX, or liquid oxygen, as our oxidizer. Now, fire generally needs three elements to ignite: heat, fuel, and an oxidizing agent, in this case, oxygen. That's the fire triangle. In our case, the liquid oxygen is chilled well below its boiling point. That makes it denser, and that means basically we can load more of it into the rocket.
Yep, and the third part of that fire triangle is a chemical known as TTEB, or triethyl aluminum and triethyl borane, which we use as an
Stage
ignition.
1 LOX load complete.
There's that call out for stage 1 LOX load complete. And the combustion of RP1 and LOX is what makes the rocket go, and it's that TTEB mixture that sets the match to the propellant mix.
Now, in addition to finishing LOX loading on the second stage in about 30 seconds, we'll have another major event at T-minus 60 seconds, and that's Falcon 9 computers going in startup. The autonomous first and second stage internal flight computers will take over the countdown. Inside of T-minus 2 seconds, we'll light the Merlin 1D engines for liftoff. And right now, though, coming up on T-minus 2 minutes, the Intuitive Machines payload continues to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket.
Currently, the weather is green, and the range is ready to support a T0 at 7:17 p.m.
Stage
Eastern
2
Time.
LOX load complete.
Okay, we've heard the call out just inside T-minus 2 minutes. LOX load on second stage complete. You can probably also hear the background enthusiasm. Everybody is getting ready for a launch to the moon. Next major event coming up right now.
Ground gas closeout.
Ground gas closeout. That means that strong back alongside the Falcon 9. We're draining any propellant from the ground lines. We're venting gas overboard. That'll also create what's typically a large white plume that comes off of the strong back. The cold gaseous oxygen we're venting off of the strong back mixes with that warm Florida air, and you get a large white cloud, and you can see it streaming away. Waiting for the call out for startup of the flight
Falcon 9 is in startup.
You see and hear it. We're in startup. Everything looks good. We're going to get the LD go for launch. And with that, let's pause for a minute and listen to that go.
LD, go for launch.
Right on time. Always love to hear that call out. T-minus 30 seconds and counting. All systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 with the Intuitive Machines lunar payload.
T-minus 15. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Go Falcon, go Intuitive Machine.
Beautiful, it's pitching downrange.
And we'll be full for number.
Falcon 9, carrying IM-2's lunar lander Athena, has successfully lifted off at pad 39A. We're heading to the moon. We heard the call out of the pitch kick. That's a small tilt of the vehicle. We're still going
Power
pretty much straight up, but now we're also slowly heading horizontal.
You heard that call out for power and telemetry nominal, and once we reach orbital altitude, we're going pretty much horizontal to the Earth. The rocket needs to go about 17,000 miles per
Falcon
hour.
9 is supersonic.
Horizontally. We heard that call out. We are supersonic, and in just a few moments, we will pass through max Q, or maximum aerodynamic pressure, on the booster.
Max Q.
We're through max Q, and the Merlin 1D engines have throttled back up to full power. Next call out we ought to hear is MVAC chill. Falcon 9 data is continuing to look good as the first stage heads out over the Atlantic Ocean. Trajectory looking good on Falcon 9. Now we're going to have a few events coming up in quick succession. We're going to start with MECO, main engine cutoff. That's the point during the flight where we shut down the 9 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. Then we'll go into stage separation, and then SES-1, which is the second stage engine start number 1.
And shortly after MECO, stage 1 and 2 will separate from each other, with the first stage booster beginning its trip back down to Earth, while the second stage engine starts for the first time, known as SES-1, where the single Merlin vacuum engine on board the second stage will light up. This is happening in just a few seconds.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
And vac ignition.
Call-outs of 3 good events. You heard it, and you should have seen it there on the webcast. MECO Stage 7, SES-1. Now, the first stage is not powered. It's shut down. Great views coming from the second stage cameras, as we have just had sunset a little while ago at Kennedy Space Center. The first stage is now coasting to apogee. That's the view on the left side. We're slowly turning using cold gas thrusters. We're turning to orient the engines into the direction of flight. Also, you may have been able to make out in a little bit of the light, the titanium grid fin deployment is underway. We're using pneumatic gas pressure.
Confirmed.
And here comes fairing separation. And a beautiful view. Looking at Athena and the ride shares on top of the second stage stack. So we had good fairing
Vehicles are on a
separation.
nominal trajectory.
Trajectory's nominal. First stage. First stage is looking good as it coasts to apogee. Second stage under power. Yomei, everything continuing to look good right now on the mission.
Yeah, we are at just over T plus 4 minutes into today's mission. IM-2 is SpaceX's 24th launch this year, and we are currently in the first of 2 planned MVAC burns. Around the T plus 6 minute mark, you should see on your screen the first stage's entry burn. It's currently making its way back down to Earth. And for that entry burn, we will relight 3 of the M1D engines on the first stage, starting with the center engine, followed shortly by the engines next to it, which will slow down the vehicle as it passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. Now we need to slow down the first stage to reduce re-entry forces, which will help us recover and reuse that first stage. And you can follow along on your screen to the telemetry on the bottom left and right of your screen for the stage 1 and stage 2 speeds and altitudes.
You may have noticed on the left side of your screen, first stage altitude has begun dropping. We have reached apogee, and now we are under the pull of gravity headed back down to the Atlantic Ocean. Now, to slow us down, we'll use that entry burn. And that means we're firing 3 Merlin engines to decelerate the Falcon 9, but we'll still be moving very rapidly. And that's going to cause the vehicle to fly through the Merlin exhaust gases. That's also known as the rocket's plume. And this will deposit a layer of soot on the vehicle surface, one of the signatures of a flown booster. Now, that soot comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses. Now, it took us almost 2 minutes since separation to get up to apogee. It's going to take the rocket just as long to bring the first stage back down to the edge of the atmosphere for the entry burn coming up in just about 20 seconds or so. Now, as a reminder, the first stage that's supporting today's mission is performing its entry burn for the 9th time. Falcon 9 is the world's first orbital reusable rocket. This is important because it's that reusability that allows SpaceX to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket and that in turn drives down the cost of space access.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
There's that call out for entry burn startup, and this will be about a 30-second burn, slowing that first stage down as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
There you can see the end of that entry burn on the first stage. And on your right, you can see the second stage still in the first of 2 planned burns carrying the Intuitive Machines 2 payload to the moon. Now coming up next, we will shut down our MVAC engine on the second stage, followed quickly by the landing burn on our first stage. And the second engine cutoff of this first burn will be in just about 30 seconds at the T plus 7 minutes and 46 second mark.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
You can see on your bottom right the speed of the second stage accelerating as we are in that burn.
Stage 1 transonic.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
MVAC shutdown.
There's that call out for MVAC shutdown. And we should be getting a confirmation of a good orbit as
Stage
well as
1 landing burn.
there is that stage 1
Nominal
landing
parking
burn.
orbit.
And that confirmation of a good orbit on stage 2. Let's watch stage 1 come back home.
Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Awesome views of that first stage landing. There you have it. That was the 413th recovery of an orbital class rocket, including first stage landings for Falcon 9 and Heavy.
Oh, first stage is back on the drone ship. Beautiful mission. Second stage is in the parking orbit in our low Earth orbit. Now the mission does continue in space with stage 2. Coming up next, we have the second burn of our MVAC engine. We call that SES-2. And that'll be the second stage burn around the T plus 36.5 minute mark. And we'll follow that with spacecraft separation. Until then, we're going to send you back to Tahira and Josh at Kennedy Space Center.
Thank you, John and Yome. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Space Coast of Florida, where we just witnessed live the beautiful liftoff of the moon-bound Intuitive Machines lunar lander named Athena. It launched on top of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket from Launch Pad 39A right here at Kennedy Space Center.
Intuitive Machines is an